started. I apologize for being late. We were in session just a few minutes ago, and several members of the committee have other committee meetings right now. So, with that said, if Representative Jackson open us up in prayer, and clerk call the roll after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day that you've given us. The scriptures tell us to rejoice in it because you've made it. And we're grateful to be represented in the people of this state. And we ask your due diligence with us this morning as we debate and carry out the fundamental rights of our citizens. Forgive sins, heal the sick, and comfort those who are going through trials of the storm. Bring us into a place of repentance that we can do your will, we ask. In Jesus' name, amen.
Mr. Chairman, just before we got started, I wanted the opportunity to introduce my page I have with me for the week. Miss Maggie Alvis, if you don't mind, please stand real quick for me. Miss Alvis attends Pelham High School, is that right? Absolutely. And her mom serves as one of our circuit court judges in Shelby County. So welcome to the State House. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Finished. Okay. With that, clerk, call the first bill. Representative Betzel, my understanding you have a substitute?
Yes, sir, I do.
Well, let's go ahead and explain the substitute.
The substitute is very easy, just some technical changes that were made from the initial draft of the bill. After some other entities previewed the bill, there were some wording changes to align with just some of their technical needs in it. So the sub just basically brought a clean version of the bill to the committee, so we didn't have a bunch of amendments made on it.
You've heard an explanation of a substitute. Is there any questions by any?
Yeah, I got my
I was going
hand.
to get the substitute before us. You want to go ahead and explain your bill, and then we'll get to, before we take any questions, we'll adopt the substituted bill. Go ahead and explain the bill.
Sure, absolutely. HB 403 would authorize the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, ALEA, to create a Alabama Criminal Enterprise database, and has a list of parameters and safeguards, if you will, that'll be placed there. The bill includes rolling out the database after 5 years of no activity, so that there's no collection of information that's dated and no longer timely and relevant. Those with access with the database must receive annual training and must demonstrate a need and a right to know. Reasonable suspicion must exist before anyone can be entered into this database. In my estimation in law enforcement and serving in a career in law enforcement, the database will enhance the ability for law enforcement to do their job in the most effective way. They won't have to rely on hearsay and assumptions when they're making a connection to satisfy the requirements of the law that was passed prior for criminal enterprise. We'll now have with this database a reliable source of information where that information can be collected and used in a way that with the law's intent. This bill does not create any new law, but it will enhance the ability for prior legislation that we already have in place to be enforced. I'll be happy to take any questions.
All right, and we explained the substitute was mainly technical in nature, but we'll go ahead, and if any members got questions on the bill, we'll take them up now. Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Betzel, what is the law today?
In regard to what, sir?
To your legislation.
So in previous legislative session, perhaps was it last year, we passed the criminal enterprise statute that has certain requirements on what it is or how you qualify to be a criminal enterprise. What this statute proposes to do, and there's absolutely no funding tied to this. This would just authorize Aaliyah if we ever allocate the funding in the future. What this would do is be an effective clearinghouse so that law enforcement information can be assembled in one area for the entire state of Alabama. Other states have already gone on into this endeavor. There is some national sharing that goes on, but this would be local to Alabama. So that information is collected, and so that when law enforcement looks at it, they can assemble the elements of the crime most effectively. They don't have to try to piece it together, hope they pieced it together. They will have one source and area to go to on any one and say, okay, here are the elements of the crime for criminal enterprise, and here is why this person meets those elements, because it'll be laid out.
Even if it's a little small town like my Thomasville City,
Yeah.
they will be able to.
Yes, sir. Now, everybody will be able to participate, but there will be requirements in order for you to participate. We don't want anyone that doesn't have the right and need to know participating, so there'll be safeguards to ensure everyone, including probably going to be annual training to ensure that they have the legal right and maintain the need to know on those information, because there are federal references in our statute here that would protect that information, because we don't want anyone's private information out in the public that doesn't need to be.
So a criminal enterprise is organized criminal network. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, sir.
And what this bill does is connect the dots.
Yes, sir. Because as you well know, crime and criminals do not adhere to county borders or city limits.
They don't stop at city limits. No.
A crime committed in Shelby County by some criminals and they come to your area, we've got to be able to connect those dots so we can most effectively hold them accountable.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from any other members of the committee? Not seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the substitute. All right, Representative Pettis adopts substitute, second by Representative Stringer. All in favor to adopt substitute indicate by saying aye. All opposed, the ayes have it. The bill is now before us as substituted. Not seeing any other questions from any members of the committee. I entertain a motion for favorable report. Representative Jackson for favorable report, second by Representative Pettis. All in favor indicate by saying aye. All opposed, the ayes have it. Your bill has a favorable report.
Thank you, fellow committee members.
As substituted. All right, I'm gonna, since I have the next bill up, clerk, call the bill. I'm gonna move the chairmanship to Vice Chair Representative Stringer.
All right, Mr. Treadaway, you can go ahead and explain the substitute.
All right, I do have a substitute which is actually encompasses the whole bill. I'll go ahead and explain the substitute. This bill would establish the crime of interference with a first responder when, after receiving a lawful order to interfere with the performance of a first responder's duties, the person approaches or remains within 25 feet of the first responder or impedes, threatens, or otherwise harasses the first responder. One of the reasons the bill was brought to me by the State Fraternal Order of Police. There's been a lot of work done on the bill with the DA's Association and various groups. We'll hear from some today. And the purpose of the bill is we've all seen across this country and here in the state of Alabama, whether it's a fireman, excuse me, because these allergies are killing me, but we've seen where firemen are trying to do their job, whether it's trying to hook up a hose that may be a block away, and groups of individuals are impeding their ability to get that done, putting lives in danger. Same thing with law enforcement officers. And what this bill simply does is allows law enforcement to give a warning, to stand back 25 feet, not to interfere. If you fail to do that and then proceed to do any of the following, you can be arrested, and this makes this a Class A misdemeanor. After being warned, told to move back, you impede or interfere with the first responder's ability to perform his or her duties. You threaten the first responder with physical harm. You strike, shove, kick, or otherwise touch the first responder or subject the first responder to physical contact. Direct abusive language, makes obscene gestures toward the first responder. Interference with the first responder, in this case, will be a Class A misdemeanor. This section does not apply to the obstruction, impairment, or hindrance of making an arrest. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions, I'd be glad to try. I know you have a public hearing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was going to address. We've got a public hearing that's been called. We've got one in opposition, one that opposes. I would like to conduct the public hearing first, and then we will take questions from members. The first I'm going to call on is opposes. It's Camilla Bennett. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Camille Bennett with Project Say Something from Florence, Alabama. HB 224 substitution is redundant. Alabama Criminal Code Section 13A 10 through 1 and Section 13A 10 through 2 already exist to protect the rights of public servants. HB 2024 substitution is more restrictive than the current code and will violate the First Amendment rights of protesters in the following ways. The synopsis of the bill, line 8 through 11, is more restrictive than the current code because it clearly states that an individual cannot come within 20 feet of any governmental official if the official gives warning. This language makes protests impossible. How can a public servant accurately measure 25 feet and carry around a bullhorn instructing protesters to disperse in real time? HB 2024 also says that individuals cannot harass the first responder or any public servant. This language is vague, restrictive, and left to the discretion of any public servant. Section 1, line 39 through 40, the current code expands to directs abusive or obscene language or makes obscene gestures toward a first responder. This language gives any public servant the right to define abuse. Abuse can be as simple as a chant or rallies that call out public servants. The definition may apply to county commission meetings, city council meetings, school board meetings, etc. HB 2024 will eliminate third-party recordings of crime scenes. The recordings of police incidents have been proven to contradict the reports of the officers involved. This bill will eliminate that window of accountability. If the intent of HB 2024 is to protect first responders in the line of duty, the law already exists. So the vague, subjective, and restrictive language needs to go. If HB 2024 was meant to expand the current code to protect public servants, their protection cannot disregard the First Amendment rights of the people. Thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We do have one in support, Everett Johnson. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, committee. Thank you for your time, the opportunity to speak to you. It's no secret that there's been an increase in violence against first responders and particularly law enforcement. And this bill, we stand for it. The Fraternal Order of Police stands for it because this will provide protection not just for law enforcement, but for public servants as a whole, to allow a safe space for those officers to work and those public safety officials to work to do the job that we asked them to do. It also provides protection for the citizens because in the event that a police officer is involved in some type of struggle with an offender and the crowd gathers on that police officer and the offender happens to grab the officer's weapon, then we have a bunch of citizens that could be harmed in that. This is going to protect not only first responders, and it's going to protect our citizens as well. Also, our first responders should be allowed to work in a safe place. They should be allowed the opportunity to do the job that they're sworn to do without interference from outside entities and people trying to prevent arrest or prevent disruption of public safety services that we ask of them to do. So at this time, I'm asking for this committee to support this legislation, get it through, and let's get it passed and protect our first responders. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, that's all of the public hearing. At this time, we'll take questions from committee members. Representative England.
Most of this is covered in various code sections, but there is one particularly troublesome part of the legislation. If you go to when it says first responder has instructed the person not to approach or to vacate the area and the person does any of the following, subsection 4 says direct abusive or obscene language or makes obscene gestures toward a first responder. And the definition of first responder includes, obviously, police officers who at this time already have are supposed to carry a little thicker skin in terms of language as used in whatever they're doing. So the standard's kind of higher, so that's why you can't arrest for disorderly conduct for those sorts of comments already. So that language in itself may be a little problematic because it just gives too much discretion away to someone who's in control of a scene to make an arrest just for a comment. And I don't know how you would feel about that, removing that language at some point, or even today, if an amendment is offered. It's just, like I said, that could, in and of itself, allow someone to be arrested for making a comment that someone doesn't like versus, what other things are listed here in terms of like impeding or interfering, threatening, which is a crime in and of itself. Obviously, strikes, shoves, kicks, or otherwise touches is a crime in and of itself. So I think the most problematic part of that is being able to arrest somebody for a comment. So would the sponsor be completely opposed to amending this legislation to remove paren 4?
We can talk about that, but as it was explained to me, Representative England, and I'll just read this section to you and tell me what you think on it. It says a person commits the crime of interference with the first responder if the first responder approaches or remains within the 25 feet or of any first responder engaged in a lawful government function after the first responder has instructed that person not to approach or vacate the area, and the person does any of the following. So to me, he's refused, that individual, he or she has refused that lawful order while they're conducting a lawful government function, and then does any of the following. So, you've already violated that lawful order. You remain and you do any of these. So to me, I see a need for it under that definition.
So if I say I don't like you from 24 feet.
Well, I mean, listen, that obviously there's a lot of subjective out on the field when an officer is facing these type of situations. But we're talking about an individual that's within that 25 feet. You've already told him to remove. You already warned him that you are conducting a government function. You've asked him to move, him or her to move. You've ordered them to. They haven't, and then they do any of the following. So I guess my position is they haven't moved, and now they start doing any of the following. At that point, you're going to make the arrest.
We'll see what,
or should make the arrest.
But practically speaking, if you're prosecuting this case, everything that you see before you becomes instructions or directions for the prosecution and the ultimate judgment by the judge. So in an effort to prosecute this case, what you're doing is saying, first I have to establish at 25 feet. If I don't establish 25 feet by whatever proof, and it can't be I just eyeballed it, I have to establish that person was within 25 feet. Then I also, again, another element becomes, then I have to say, I gave them an order to vacate. Once I establish those two, then I have to go from this list. And what if that person only makes comments?
But they're also, that's not only.
I mean, because like I said, if you just go back to the question, I've established every element up to that point. So we are in a very hyper situation. Something is going on that requires a first responder. The first responder then says, okay, somehow I've established what 25-foot parameter is around me. A, I have to prove that. But then B, then I have to establish that person then said, leave whatever arbitrary 25 feet parameter I've established. And then once I establish those two things, then any comment that follows could be, based on the eye of the beholder, abusive, obscene, or obscene gestures. So that means somebody 24 feet away who 24 feet away might not be interfering at all in what's going on. We'll just say shoots the bird at the police officer or whoever's there, and that person gets arrested for basically a hand gesture.
So let's look at this in the eyes of somebody on the scene, a public safety officer. We've got somebody that's 25, obviously 35, 40 feet, and they're doing all of number 4, direct abusive scene language. You can't make the arrest. You can't make the arrest, right? I mean, we know they're beyond the 25 feet.
I mean,
And they're sitting there, using abusive language, threatening language to a first responder. Under this law here, they're not making an arrest. This is after they refuse to leave the area.
And that's what I've attempted to establish in the question that I asked. Every element, let's just assume that every element has been met. The person is 24 feet, and after that, that the directive is given. I need you to back up a half a foot. And I don't say anything. I don't do anything. I'm at this point, I can't really tell if I'm 25 feet away or not. But then I'll give you the middle finger. Would anybody in here be comfortable with someone who's 24 feet away, who's really technically not interfering? They're just upset. Then they, shoot the middle finger because they're angry, being able to be arrested for that.
With the chairman's permission, I worked on this with the District Attorneys Association, and I'd like if Jeff can come up and maybe explain that area and where we're at, and go from there.
Jeff, if you're able to step up to the mic and help us. Thanks, sir.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Bradley. I'm the General Counsel for the Office of Prosecution Services. As I understand the question, both Representative England and Representative Treadway are correct in my understanding. If the person is 24 feet away and they flip the bird or say something or something like that, then that would subject them to arrest under this code section, should it pass. As Representative Treadway has pointed out, there are additional elements to this that are not required. As Representative England pointed out earlier, this language is taken from disorderly conduct. So there are additional elements that are required within this that would distinguish this code section from the code section of disorderly conduct that would make it applicable to the first responders. Now, whether or not they could prove before the judge, say it was a dispute as to whether it was 24, 25, 27 feet, whatever the case may be, that would come down to the fact finder, which would be the judge, or if it was appealed to circuit court on a de novo, then it would be up to the jury to find whether the officer's testimony was credible, whether that 24, 25 foot fact was established and proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And that could be proven, it would depend on the circumstances. Say if it was if there was a body cam that happened to be there, and they turned and the person is right here in front of them, that would clearly be within the 25 feet. 25 feet is just shy of 10 yards, which everybody is kind of familiar with. We're all football fans. So, it would be within 10 yards, slightly less than 10 yards. So it would depend on what the proof was, and if they turned and the person was, approximately 25, 27 feet, it would come down to the credibility of the witness, credibility and weight of the evidence that was presented to the judge or the jury as to whether that element of 25 feet was met or not.
I got a question. So if, I probably know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. The individual's right up in your face.
Yes.
And they move back 5 or 10 feet. Let's just say clearly within the 25. And all they're doing at that point is cussing, shooting you to bird, and doing all that. Then if that was removed, then one of these other elements would have to then be in play before an arrest can be made. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. If the direct or abusive or obscene language, if that is removed,
right,
then what that would leave is they would have to be within the 25-foot diameter or distance. Excuse me, not diameter. And then they would have to impede or interfere, threaten, or strike, shove, or kick. So if
So by removing it, I want to get this straight.
yes,
And they're right there, and you're trying to conduct, lawful government operation, whether
Yes,
it's a fireman or a policeman.
yes, sir.
And they just step back a few feet, and they're coming in and out, but they're just using obscene language and threatening. So you remove that, then you remove that element to be able to arrest. What do you do with that individual at that time? I mean, you lose that element. They need to get out of that scene and let public safety do their job. We're not, we're talking about interfering here.
Yes,
Well,
sir. Oh,
If I could respond to that what you would be left with is what appears to be, to me, actual interference, meaning that if you get 25 feet and the person doesn't leave the area, but then actually impedes or interferes with the first responder's ability to perform his or her duties, threatens physical harm, or strikes, shoves, kicks, or otherwise touches the first responder or subjects the first responder to physical contact, it seems to me that the first three elements are actual interference versus 4 just being annoyed at somebody's conduct. So, like, to me, it seems like the first 3 elements strike at the heart of what you're trying to get at versus the 4th one just being, I'm going to arrest you because I'm mad at you, which is something that we try to not engage in. So, because, we don't want to give so much subjectivity that a police officer on the street is becoming more of a subject matter issue than it does an actual physical activity issue. So I'm going to arrest you because you did something wrong, not because I'm mad at you. So to me, if you remove the paren 4, it narrows it down more appropriately to get at the conduct that you believe is more towards impeding or interfering the governmental function that the first responder is engaged in.
If I worked with you on that, Representative England, you think you can support the bill after that?
It certainly helps me get closer because one of the things that we already understand is that disorderly conduct in and of itself is a crime.
Right.
So that kind of gives you the ability to do some of what you're talking about. So yeah, I mean, I could get closer, certainly.
All right. Representative Wadsworth and then Representative Betzel.
Just want to ask a question. Under this bill, is there anything in the bill that directs the first responder, to tell them they have to stay at least 25 feet away in the bill?
I'm sorry. Is that for me or is that for Representative Treadway?
Either one.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Is there anything in the bill that says the first responder has to say you have to be 25 feet away? Tells them.
I think when you get up to when you give a lawful order, you have to give a lawful order.
Yeah, but do they know it's 25 feet? Is there anything in the bill that says they have to say you have to stay 25 feet away?
Well, it says it remains within 25 feet. A
But
person
it tells them to be 25 feet or further away.
is 25 feet of any first responder engaged in a lawful
They
government
have-
function.
They just have to know 25 feet.
Well, I'm sure the officer on the scene is going to.
But
When you warn them of the law. I mean,
but
that's
is there
just part of
anything
it.
that says they have to tell them it's 25 feet?
I don't know if there's any. I believe that. I mean, Jeff, maybe you can answer that. I mean, I don't know if that's a normal thing you put. I mean, you're not in violation of law. I mean, law enforcement officer is going to inform the individual that they're breaking the law or what they're being arrested for. So
Well,
as far
that
as
would be after the arrest, but I'm talking about when you give the lawful order, is there anything that says you have to remain 25 feet away?
There is the requirement that they've been instructed to leave the area.
But is there anything that says you have to remain 25 feet and further away?
There's nothing in the bill that specifies the officer has to tell them the 25 feet. No. But there is the requirement that they have already been instructed to leave the area.
But it doesn't say what distance they have to be away.
It doesn't dictate what the officer has to say. No, sir.
All right, Representative Bedsole, then Representative Jackson, then Representative Morris.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I just, in the spirit that Representative England and Representative Treadaway, I appreciate the willingness to work. I never thought I'd say this about myself as a law enforcement officer. Maybe I'm a little old school, and I understand in my career you have been instructed, or we have been trained to take some verbal abuse at times. I definitely appreciate the spirit of the bill and think it's necessary. But I would be willing to have conversations as well. I mean, the verbal abuse just kind of comes with the territory as long as you're not interfering with the ability to do my job. These other things that are elements are very important. So anything I can do to contribute to that conversation, I would greatly be a part of.
Thank you. Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say that this bill will really eliminate protest, lawful protest. You said 25 feet. I can, if it hadn't been for that young lady in Minnesota that had a phone recording George Floyd's murder, it never would have became public if this kind of law was in place. See, we need to protect first responders, yes, and he had his parameters. But now you're gonna take away the recording. And so to have suggestions that to say something, you know, I've been abused. I've been called names. And that don't give me a reason to want to fight a person or have the authority to arrest them because I have a badge. I have to learn how to deal with the public. And if we got hot-headed people in blue, who matter of fact, manifesting issues rather than trying to resolve them, I can see this bill is not being very productive or helpful, Mr. Chairman. I really do. And so we need to look at the entire situation here.
Now, let me respond, if you don't mind. I understand your concerns. We're living in a society now, over the last decade or we've demonized the profession of law enforcement to the fact that in the last decade, there's 500 fewer police officers in Jefferson County alone, and crime has tripled. And folks are dying at an alarming rate. We want to blame police officers for every bad thing out there that happens. Unfortunately, every profession has a bad apple. And the situation with John Floyd, folks went to prison for it, justifiably so. We cannot put every police officer in the same basket of those who do something wrong. 10 years ago, Birmingham had 53 homicides, 800-something officers on the street. By some estimates, they're below 400 now. And we've got to support law enforcement when they're out there doing their job. We're talking nobody has taken away peaceful protest in this country or in this city or in this bill. This bill has been worked on, and it's really specific about what we're seeing an alarming rate of. And that is not peaceful protest, but individuals obstructing, being paid to come into town. And I've seen it firsthand with 31 years on the street. And by the way, I've never had a complaint on me. And 99% of the cops do not have complaints of excessive force or rude or discourteous. So I'm not propping myself up. I'm in the big pool with a bunch of them. And I'm sure Bedsole is still active, has the same kind of record. That's 99% of your law enforcement officers in this country. We better stop demonizing them and come up with bills. I'm willing to work with Representative England, and that issue has been brought up to me by others. And given a chance, this is a public hearing, so we won't vote on it. We got a chance between this week and the week we come back to work on that section and any other section. But the purpose of the bill is to protect public safety while they're doing a lawful government operation. And that's most of the bills and laws we have are subjective to the call of the person and making a split decision, and many times in a life and death situation. If you tell an individual to back up and you give them a lawful order while you're doing a lawful government function, and they do any of the others, what do you want? At that point, I've got the floor. At that point, you need to make an arrest. And I'm sorry if that offends some people. It happens. It needs to happen to protect the folks in the community, the ones who at least well, let me put it this way: that don't need to live in homes that they feel like they're in prison. They're scared to death because we don't have police out there, and we're stripping them of their duties. Most officers in this country will tell you why crime is rampant in this country is because they're wearing blinders. There's no more proactive policing going on because we sit up here and demonize them on everything they do on that one or two little bad apple. You don't hear the thousands of violent encounters daily in America that are handled very safely. So when those bad things, unfortunate things happen, they should be dealt with swiftly, transparently, in the open. And I don't have an issue with that. But I do have an issue with every time we have a bill or I have a bill trying to protect law enforcement's ability to do their job, to protect all of us, that we bring up all these other situations that don't apply anyway. That has nothing to do with this bill.
May I?
Yes, sir.
100% I'm with the bill protecting first responders and law enforcement. Now, you brought up the issue of people just abusing the law. Well, to go back to January 6th, this is where all this crap started. When you loose a mob on police officers at the Capitol, people disrespect police, and they go and beat them up and what American flag poles and all this stuff. Then and this is the problem. Violence comes from up, and people do everything that this man said do. You loose the bound and let the captive go free, but you're bound and they're free. And so you got me started. But I'm grateful that we're gonna have some dialogue and we can do some things that we can make this bill better. I want everybody to know that I'm not against. The police, they protect me. I'm not against the people in the blue or the brown or the green or what other colors they wear, but we want to protect the citizens as well. Thank you.
Representative Morris.
To say one or two is like, oh my goodness, that was like such a blow. But since we're not voting on the bill today, I bypass that part. But let's do the 24 feet. Can either one of you? I know you said it's about 10 yards. Most of us get it like basically sitting watching TV or on the football field. But in this room, can you show me what is Treadaway? Can you show me, Mr. Chairman, from where you sitting, where it's 24 feet?
So in a real life scenario,
yes,
saying,
you right from where you are.
I'm move you so far back.
That's not what I asked you. I asked you where is 24 feet.
But you understand, when you're on the street, you're going to move people beyond that. So when I go and stand, when I go and sit and raise my hand, I can sit there and swear that they were way past 25.
Okay, but I'm asking.
So nobody's playing with the 25 foot. You're probably going to have to be 40, 50.
Where is 24 feet from you in this room?
Oh, in this room, it'd easily be from that wall past that wall, way over.
So if
easily.
So if an officer making an arrest from that wall, and someone is beyond that wall, saying something bad or negative or hurting your feelings. Let's say hurting your feelings because now your feelings are involved. But that's what that is. When if someone call you out your name, your feelings are involved because you're not in a threat. From that wall, and someone is beyond the other wall, you're not in a threat. So that's 24 feet.
I agree.
But that's not what your bill is doing.
You have to demonstrate other interference and then disobey a lawful order and do one of the others. We're going to work on one area over the week that Representative England has brought up. And he's not the first one to bring it up. I thought the issue would come up. But I want to have an opportunity to talk to them about that, talk to all the parties involved, and we'll make that adjustment. But the 25 feet, Florida's passed it and several other states passed it.
Those are not no good places to represent. I mean, that's oh, good God, no.
Well, Jeff, maybe you can explain the whole footage. This is not nothing new to law enforcement. You have to have some
But it's not new to law enforcement. But when you say things like the small number, but we know it's a large number. I can
What's a large
a large number of black people who are being killed.
What do you mean bad
So
officers?
yes, yes.
not a
So
lot.
that, but
Statistics have it at 1%.
so, but when you have a lady laying in bed, when you have a woman saying, I rebuke that, when you have a man kneeled on the ground, when you have another man being shot in his back, I could keep going on and on about things that actually took place. It's not one or two, but that's inside your world. And this is what we are trying to tell you that we have to deal with inside our community, with our people. And I just didn't want to end up in that space. I just really want to talk about to let the young people actually see what 25, 24 feet from one wall to the next wall, and if they having an issue with somebody being arrested, or if they got an issue with me, I have tough skin. So if you have an issue with me and you way over there and you call me out my name, more than likely I just smile and wave. I don't get in my feelings like that. So I think that if you're going to be in law enforcement, before you sign up, you need to develop some tough skin. Thank you.
Yeah, Representative England.
Honestly, and it's going to be quick. I just don't want the effort for government officials, legislators who are supposed to govern, when there are accountability measures introduced. I don't want that confused with me or anybody else who wants accountability is confused with us not supporting law enforcement. Those are completely two different things. And as far as being a legislator is concerned, or a government official who's responsible for creating laws, I think it's our responsibility at most times to kind of land in the middle and not take either side, to make sure that while we're protecting law enforcement and understanding that there's a very difficult job associated with what they do on a daily basis, that in the worst of the worst, they could take someone's life. So we're responsible for creating scenarios, laws, policies, or procedures that protect both sides as best we can. Because while we talk about law enforcement and trying to revere them and their responsibilities, at the same time, we can't hide from or run away from places like Brookside or Hanceville, where we had an entire police department that was essentially corrupted to the point where we had to get rid of it, where somebody on duty died going into the evidence locker taking drugs like it was a pharmacy. So it's our responsibility to not only make sure that law enforcement officers are safe, but that we also create an environment for accountability, because we don't want people to believe on the side of the road that they won't have redress and they end up taking things into their own hands. So I think we need to maintain that balance so people know that the mission is to protect and serve, and that when officers get outside of those bounds, that we also have the ability to hold them accountable, because that's the only way that we prevent chaos.
I agree. If you would, I'll get with you and Jeff and other interested parties on any amendments that we can offer, and bring the bill back next time we adjourn. Next time we go into session.
Yes, sir. Representative Jackson.
Thank you. I would like to let the sponsor know that, we have mental health issues, and somebody could be having a meltdown, and that police officer going, getting back at that person and not comprehending what you're saying, and it created an issue. So let's look. So I work with mental health, and that's why I know. I think we need some therapists up here.
You too?
It will help.
What do you think about in this committee?
I'll start my treatment today.
All right, Jeff, I missed a process. I was supposed to get you to identify yourself and the agency you're with.
Yes, sir. My name is Jeff Bradley. I'm the General Counsel for the Office of Prosecution Services.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your assistance. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, we are adjourned.
Everett, if you hang on, Jeff, you hang on for just a second. I want to see if we'll go ahead and get together right now.
Yeah, I guess I am. It's kind of the problem is, as always, you start taking the extremes of any example, and it starts corrupting the
officers can't establish a phone call 25 feet is kind of an arbitrary.
Realistically, if you're prosecuting this, all right, officer, where were you? I was right. Okay, where were they?
I like it.
Camille.
But at the same time in the field, they don't. Yes, sir.